Elizabeth, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's Friday. I'm happy. It's great to meet you. I just love our shared passion for jazz that I just found out. So life is good.
100%. Yeah. For the listeners, I think maybe, I don't know. It's been like 6 years. I don't know if I talk a lot about like my background for real. But yeah, I was a music major in college. I went to the University of Houston on a music scholarship. I was already admitted because in Texas at the time, like if you were top 10% of your class, you automatically got admitted to any state school.
Right. I
I,
remember that
I
deal.
think I think now it's
Yeah.
like top 7% or 8%. But anyway, time
Right.
moves on.
Right.
And so anyway, met my wife, the person who would be my wife, and changed my major to business and graduated in 3 years. But music has always been a passion and a love of mine. So yeah, I love that we already have that shared interest. Look, I want to get into it. You're the president of Hello Alice, which
hmm
empowers founders from marginalized backgrounds and identities. I want to understand why this work.
Ugh. One, I think the individuals we serve are the best in the business. So as a capitalist, I think the fact that we went to get funding into who we call the new majority of business owners is just good business. So I'll just start there.
Okay.
Personally, I am also a Texan, and but I bounced pretty quick and went into the Peace Corps, and then I worked for the UN for 10 years, and I was so passionate about the importance of someone being able to make a living for
Mm,
themselves, start their own business, and so it was a real focus of mine in other countries
mm,
to ensure that particularly women had rights to own their own micro business. And then when I got back to the US, I was so shocked how hard it was to start and grow a business here in the country where I think actually is so unique in the sense of, if you build it, they will
yeah.
come. And so I went over and worked for Michael Dell at Dell Technologies for a while and met my amazing co-founder, Carolyn Rods. And we just had this shared passion for what if we built something that would help small business owners launch and grow. And we both had our passion points for women. Carolyn's Latina, so she was looking at people of color. I'm in a veterans household, so I was also thinking about our vets. And so I guess the rest is history. We put our heads together. We actually, crazy enough, moved in together, shared childcare, and built this sucker. And now here we are. These years later, Hello Alice, we serve 1.5 million small businesses across the country.
It's incredible. To your point, you think about this new majority, and the reality of women and black and brown people, black and brown women, because there's an intersectional nature there. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but yeah, a lot of folks on the margins are building their own companies, right? Oftentimes as a means to your other point, take care of themselves, right? Like when corporate
Right.
America doesn't necessarily fit, or doesn't work out, then it's like, okay, man, what does it look like to do this on my own? I'm curious, like we all build things or we try to build things, and we can start off unsure, right? Like I think about Living Corporate. We started in 2018 as just a singular podcast and like kind of was like a hobby. Then we started like working with clients and doing like some brand storytelling work. And then we like doing like creating other service lines. But there was some anxiety, at least for me, right? And figuring out like, okay,
Absolutely.
how real is this, right? Like I feel like a lot of folks eventually have a moment or moments when they realize, hey, this is real. Like I'm curious, like
Right.
with Hello Alice, like where did you realize this is real?
Well, first, I just want to give permission to you and anyone who starts a business. It is hard and it's scary. And I think there are pattern moments for any founder that are the hardest. And I think the first one is starting,
Hmm.
taking that risk, making the leap, knowing when you can do that safely. And this whole myth of being, a white male 19-year-old in a dorm room with plenty of time and money to launch a company is like 0.0001% of all of us,
Right,
right?
right.
So I just want to just commend you on even saying that out loud. So for Carolyn and I, actually, it's funny. September is our quote work anniversary when we actually got a paycheck. And we both worked in this business for years without getting paid. And so we have this kind of funny work anniversary every year. So I would say there was two times for me when it was real. One was when I actually got a paycheck from my own business. Was pretty crazy. And as many founders that are self-funded in the early days, you rarely pay yourselves. And then the second was, I remember vividly when I said 1.5 million, but I remember when we hit our first 10,000 people on the platform and just thinking, holy shit, my hometown doesn't have that many people in it. This is a responsibility now. We are serving customers. We are serving maybe my favorite coffee shop, or we're serving my cousin's dry cleaners. We are serving customers. And I remember both the excitement and the weight of that as being, quote, real.
And to your point about like this myth of like, you're in a dorm or you're in your parents' garage, and it's like, those things are real. But like for so many people on the margins, I don't like when they say, well, you do a friends and family round. It's like, yo, I don't have friends and family that are willing to give me, $5,000 a pop. And like, for me to get started. Right. Like, I think like for so many people, like thinking about my story, living corporate started and was able to be funded through my full-time job. Right. So for like 5.5 of our 6 years of existence so far, I was working a whole nother job. And so like, I was just, I've invested, easily 6 figures, right, into this thing to make it into something. And like, yes, now I'm doing it full time, but 100% like this idea that like, oh, well, you can just kind of go off. And I mean, even in this, like, I'm curious, like even in this space, especially in this space where loans are not as cheap and banks are, and like, people are not giving, the money is not coming as freely with just ideas.
No, it's much harder right now.
Like, yeah. What are you seeing in just kind of like in the community and the customers that you've built around that? Like, are you seeing kind of like pressures change and rise? Like, especially, yeah.
So on one hand, Zach, it's an exciting time. There are 5 times the amount of small businesses launching in America than ever before. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the fastest growing percentages, they are women of color, they are Latinos. I mean, it's veteran owned. It's a very exciting time. On the other side, there is not enough capital or what I would call affordable capital to meet that excitement. Mm-hmm. And then you've got inflation on top of that on goods sold and so on. So, and then I go back to the other side that it's actually cheaper on some things right now. It's cheaper to launch a website. It's cheaper to get your first phone line. It's like the actual nuts and bolts are easier, more accessible if you have broadband. I'll always say that, and cheaper. But the access to capital is more expensive. And then unfortunately, even though we've all worked so hard on access to capital for women and people of color and vets, those percentages have unfortunately gone down. So Carolyn and I are a woman minority owned company technically, and we are venture backed now. And less than 2% of women get venture capital, for example. And I bring that up because one, I think it's a massive opportunity for the 98% if somebody wants to jump in there. But two, it's just important. And then women of color, it goes down by another 1.5%. So I don't say that to scare people though either. I still think it is a good time to start a business. I think you're just going to have to be so aware of your capital. You're going to have to start with less money. You're going to be very conservative on spend. And then at Hello Alice, we preach every day about your financial health.
Yeah.
Diversifying where you're getting money, being smart about, do I really need to hire that person yet? So the last thing I'll just say, Zach, is I do love there are alternative ways to fund your business that are coming out every day right now. So I love secured credit. That's an old model that's coming back. I love small business grants. I love partnerships. So, I guess this is a good news, not so good news, but there maybe is going to be a good outcome in the end.
Yeah, 100%. And like to your point about like VC backed, like, I mean, so I'm looking at this article from the World Economic Forum, and also like in Forbes and things like Black women specifically receive less than 0.5% of all, like 0.35%, right? It's like a penny on a penny. It's like so tiny. And so like, it's interesting because we've had like so many conversations recently, past year or so, in the corporate about the VC space and just different ways to fund your organization. And it's like, I do think that like the VC space has been like really oversaturated, over engaged, and almost in certain ways kind of presented as this like fairy tale thing, right? Like, hey, if you have a really good idea, then you put your deck together, then these people are going to.
Zach, the word I think that should be, and this is maybe hypocrisy because we're a Series C backed company, but we are a tech data AI company. Those are very expensive in the early days.
Yeah.
The vast majority of companies should not be venture funded.
Yeah.
I mean, and also you're diluting your ownership, you're giving up equity, you are losing control. There are so many reasons not to do it. And I mean, the best way to fund your business is through customers and receipts, right? If you can build that business and bring in customers and build slowly over time, that is the best way. I am a fan of responsible credit, responsible lending, lines of credit. I mean, there are ways when it is time to take a bit more growth and a little bit more risk to do that affordably. Now, again, we have to be honest about if you're a woman or a person of color or you're a U.S. veteran without credit history, that is going to take you longer and be harder, which sucks, right? And that's why we exist and other great organizations exist. But I am with you that the notion of venture, really, unless you're, a biomed or a heavy tech, I mean, or a later stage CPG company, is really, I don't even think should be in your vernacular.
Yeah, I mean, and when I think about, and kind of like at the top of this conversation, I was talking about like, I mean, look, I'm speaking from my own experience and then talking to other people. Is like a lot of folks on the margins, they do their own thing because their passions weren't satisfied in corporate, and or just corporate America was not, and it's not built for women, certainly not built for Black and brown women, and it's not built for Black folks in general. So like when queer folks, like folks who exist on these margins, so when they go off and they build their own things, like, man, like that sucks. You're going to build your own thing, and then if you do miraculously get into one of these situations where you're backed, you're going into venture, you end up having folks that you answer to that may or may not actually share your values, right? Like they might, like, hey, like they're looking for you they're hoping that you're going to take off so they can have some huge exit. Yeah. They're not necessarily, it's not. And so I think that's the challenge for me. And I talk to so many other, like, I've talked to like experienced entrepreneurs, like people who like bootstrap their business. Like now, like I'm talking like they might be like 20 years in the game now, Elizabeth, but like they started off and they struggle to get loans. They struggle to get lines of credit or whatever the case is. So they had to build it, to your point, through revenue, like through their own customers. Right. And I think
it's still the best way,
It's the best way.
Sorry, Zach, you get me excited over here. Ahead. I don't mean to interrupt. The two things, though, that I think make the best founders and the best long-term companies are resilience. And then the second is more technical, which is cash flowing your business. So while, Carolyn and I probably, we got 200 to 400 no's in our first year, we learned a lot from those no's. We had to be a lot fucking tougher. We had to know our numbers backwards and forwards. We had a lot of alcohol. We had to move in together and share childcare to afford all of it. But that means we got closer and worked harder together. So when economic dips have happened, we've been sued, we've got, COVID. I feel like we had been through so much adversity that we had a really strong foundation. And that we've been able to navigate things. And when I look at founders who are women of color or veterans who are trying to integrate back into our country at the same time as they're building a company, that resilience leadership skill set is, you can't teach that. That is a lived skill.
Yeah.
So you will see over the long term companies that outperform, I think, those who had it a little easier in the long run. So I do think that doesn't make it easy or right or anything I want for someone, but I do, if I'm an investor, a banker, a backer, I'm going to look for that resilience in a founder.
Let's talk about, you said COVID, like, let's talk about your work in the context of 2020 and 2022, frankly, just 2020 to now. I mean, after the murder of George Floyd, like, I'm curious, like, what kind of traction did you see differently with Hello Alice, and how, if at all, was it different than what you experienced before that season?
Yeah. So we grew like lightning during that era. But boy, did we make some mistakes in the beginning. So our board, very appropriately, when COVID happened, said, we want you to do a 30% reduction today. So without even knowing, and which was frankly smart, right? Without knowing we were about to hit the biggest growth spurt of our company. So we laid people off, like the vast majority of businesses at that time, to make sure we had cash in the door. And then we ended up doing, I think, two things in that time that, well, I got to say a couple of things. One, our technology was getting so strong. Kelsey Ruger, who is a U of H grad like you, who's our chief product officer, and I think the greatest product officer in the country, really came in and took our technology to the next level. So the tech was ready, right? On ability and our ability to point to good capital. And then with COVID and the murder of George Floyd, two things happened. I'll start with COVID. We were about to roll out a big feature, and we ended up stopping, taking all that money and building the COVID-19 Business Center for our small business owners. I mean, in the course of 3 weeks, wow. we built that sucker and had it rolled out. And it had, how do you apply for EIDL, PPP? How do you actually close your business and not ruin your credit? How do you declare bankruptcy? We ended up popping up a mental health center for our small business owners. Wow. I mean, all of us worked day and night, and we grew by the hundreds of thousands during that, Zach. And I think it was because we just met our customers where they needed us. We thought we were going in one direction, and we scrapped a very expensive project to do this because, I mean, people were desperate. And I'm very proud of that. And everyone thought we were nuts. And I mean, we ended up being flooded with governor's requests, the SBA, and everyone started pointing to us because we were just moving as fast as we could based on what we heard our businesses need. Sure. And I never thought in a million worlds that Hello Alice, who's known for helping you grow, was going to actually help you shut down or declare bankruptcy. But that's what our founders needed so they could build a new business later without ruining their lives, right? And then the mental health thing was pretty crazy because we constantly survey our business owners, and in the top 3 consistently barriers to running their business at the time was their own isolation and health issues. And then you parallel that with the murder of George Floyd, and our Black-owned businesses and people of color in general were really seeking community at that time. Mm-hmm. And we had built a small feature, Carolyn had, my co-founder, where you could connect with other business owners. If you wanted to share ideas, maybe it was you wanted to connect with other Black-owned businesses or other bakeries or other businesses in Houston. That feature just blew up. And so we invested a lot of time into increasing that. And then we reached out. We were already working with the NAACP, Urban League, and Black and Brown Founders and Digital Undivided. And they were really looking for a place to pull specifically small businesses together to help each other through this time. And so the Black-owned Business Center came out of that now we run with NAACP, and now it has, I want to say, almost 600,000 small businesses.
Wow.
So this was a time of absolute chaos, but following your values and your passion. We had a lot of investors not happy with the moment of, why are you spending on this? Where's our product rollout? Oof, why are you spending here? And, they would all, I think, turn around now and say, oh my God, look how that grew the business. Yeah. I will say, from a personal standpoint, almost all of us are parents. So we were homeschooling, or we had moved in aging parents into our homes. It was a very hard time on my team. Yeah. And I still look back and feel bad about how much they worked in addition to all the shit going on during COVID. I think we wore a lot of people out, including ourselves. So, I have mixed feelings about all of it.
It's interesting. I think it's funny, as I've joked about this on the pod, but also off of it. I think about that time, that summer, when George Floyd was murdered. And I remember it just being this, people were calling it a racial reckoning, right? Everyone's having all these conversations. Yeah. I'm curious for you, as a white woman in this space, obviously, under the boot of the patriarchy, right. And at the same time benefiting from privilege as a white person. I'm curious, and if I may say, objectively, a conventionally attractive person, right? Symmetrical face, blonde hair, you look great, great teeth. I'm curious, did this...
Zach, that is the most bizarre intro into a question I have ever gotten.
I know, right? And that's why we're different over here. Is living corporate is different. We're having real talk in the corporate world, Elizabeth. Okay.
Well, you're also making an almost 50-year-old woman blush.
Oh, well, no. Listen, hey, congratulations, your skin routine, because it's true. Sometimes...
You know what it's called? Sleep.
Amen. And water. You drink water too, right?
Sleep is the new cocaine, dude. I'm telling you. Let's go. Let's fucking go. Okay, go ahead with your provocative question. I'm ready. Now that I'm done blushing, I'm totally ready.
Okay. No. So the lead up is to say, did that season bring any new points of inner reflection or self confrontation in terms of just how you're showing up in these spaces, as Elizabeth the individual, and as Elizabeth, owner of a company that is serving marginalized people. I'm curious about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a both and there. I'll answer the individual with just I think the most appropriate thing is just tell a very personal story. My two closest colleagues at the time are African-American men over 40. Okay. And never once, in very close friends, and never once did I sit and have a conversation with them about what's it been like. What is it like to work here? What's it been like to grow your career? And it just opened up a new level of relationship there. But also, I really struggled, and I think they struggled with, should this been deeper a long time ago? And they also taught me a lot about, I would say, the younger people on our team who, like you said, are white, and there was a lot of tension on, obviously, if you work for Hello Alice, you have a certain value set or you wouldn't come work here. Sure. And there was such an outpouring of wanting to do something after George Floyd, and immediately, and on social media and statements. And these two gentlemen were so staid in their wanting to think this through and be reflective. And I'll never forget, I'm not using names, but one of them said, this has happened every day in my neighborhood for 40 years. And so it was definitely for me a humbling time in learning and listening. And I'm still there. I'm still listening and learning and trying to understand. And also being a, quote, manager between generations, races, theories, also big city, small city, north, south. I mean, there was so much complexity there as a leader. And I just kept circling back to my two colleagues and listening and learning and getting their counsel on not just them and me, but the business. How are we approaching this? And then on the professional side, Zach, we made a decision as a company. It wasn't just George Floyd, though. It was COVID. It was who we were serving, to go deeper with the organizations we partner with. Mm-hmm. So we'd already had a multi-year history with the U.S. Hispanic Chamber and NAACP. And you just think of any of the big chambers that serve small businesses. Yep. But we decided we needed even more of their, not partnership, but almost governance on some of our work. And so technically, so this is not like the happy, let's host an event together. This is the words we're using all the way down to let's start bifurcating why credit scores are different for different races. Mm-hmm. And we've kept down that path, and we've created some great freaking products out of those relationships for all sides. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, what I'm nervous about right now is I think we're just getting started on going deeper, and I'm seeing a lot of people back off.
Yeah.
And, we were sued this past year by America First Legal, Stephen Miller, for our Black-owned business programs. And a lot of folks are in fear right now, corporate America. And we don't need another awakening. We need to keep going, right? Yeah. It's just, I'm very, very concerned about that.
Well, what's interesting? So like my biggest critique, like coming out of, or like even like in the midst of things come, the protests and actions, really the corporate actions taken after George Floyd's murder, was a lot of it was so performative, right? And symbolic. And I'm like, hey, look, like, the drama is cool. Like painting Black Lives Matter on the street is okay. Giving us skin-toned Band-Aids is fine. But that's not what we actually need. Like, we need like systemic changes. What I find so intriguing about Hello Alice, and like, I keep it 1,000 around here, right? Like 99% of the folks that come on Living Corporate in this season of like our media service line, they come through agencies, right? So like what really intrigued me is like, why I really wanted to talk to you about Hello Alice, about your journey and your story, is because y'all actually serve in a function that can can create systemic change, right? Like y'all are already providing like funding to prospective business owners and entrepreneurs. Like that is, so like there's something tangible there to solve. So I love the fact that like you interrogated elements of the system that create disparate impact for people on the margins. Like that is, like, to me, that's like a good example. That's a tangible thing of something that like is important and meaningful, as opposed to just like, oh, well, we like, went on social media and put out a statement. And not to say you can't put out a statement. Statements are fine, but pairing it with something real. You know what I mean?
Sure, absolutely. And look, we're in election season right now, if you haven't noticed. And I'm all over small business owners to vote because, and the most of them do. The last presidential election, over 90% of small business owners voted, but it is critical. And I don't just mean the presidential election, the state, county and city elections. County and city have more to do with small business than feds do. Right. But part of that is, like, we can yell at the banks and funders all we want, but some of the way our credit institution is built in the U.S., we've got to start chipping away at it. So, so one of the credit products I love the most is the secured credit product, which really is for folks without any credit history. And the top 3 audiences there are women who've been out of the workforce during the care economy, Black men over 30 who have not had ability to build their credit through generational wealth gaps, and so on. And then U.S. veterans who've been deployed over 5 years. So you could even bifurcate, the individual like me who missed that one phone bill, so my credit went to shit. So I have bad credit, quote unquote. But then there are people who just never got to build their credit at all. And there are so many things that we can now with AI and data can separate and get people the capital they need. And the secured credit product basically is working with folks who don't have credit history. We get them operational credit for their business, but you still, by law, have to put a collateral up, which most people can't afford. So we're giving revolving grants for that collateral. And then we help graduate people to unsecured, what would be street market credit. And then that grant comes back. So I want every bank in America to do that. There is no downside.
Yeah.
Right. So, but policymakers are the one who allow these innovative things to happen. So I'm really hoping right now that folks do their homework. They're really paying attention. It's not about Republican, Democrat. It's about who's going to get in office and understands the mechanics of business, loans, credit. And I know as a business owner, we're so stinking busy. It's so hard. But there are ways, I think, these days to chip away at some of that.
No, 100%. I didn't
mean to go policy wonk on you, but I think
no. Because you also mentioned something I wanted to get to about the fact that Hello Alice was sued, right? So and Stephen Miller too. Like, that's the dude. He's like 30, but he looks like 85. The bald dude, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Have you seen Mr. Burns on?
He does look like Mr. Burns. That's facts. That's a very apt comparison, actually.
What I said was, have you seen Mr. Burns on The Simpsons? That's all I said.
That's yeah. I mean, you didn't say that. I'm saying that on my podcast. So, it's interesting because there's a lot of headlines about DEI being under attack, but you actually were attacked in court for the work that your organization does. Like, talk to me about the experience of that, right? Like, were you just like doing your thing and then you got served in the mail? Like, somebody popped up on you and handed, like, what happened?
Oh, so crazy. So a bit of context, we've done almost $45 million in philanthropic small business grants to every race, gender, industry, you name it. And we get hyper focused to make sure those grants are used for business growth. And the way to do that is to work really hard, almost as if it was a loan, but it's a non-dilutive, obviously, product. So this program, which I love, was with Progressive Insurance for commercial vehicle companies owned by African Americans, which is a crazy fast-growing industry, actually. And there is again, complexity, right? There is also a complexity about Black individuals getting insurance on commercial vehicles. So there's like barrier after barrier, even though this is a high growth, high impact job creator industry. Okay. So I love this program. And so $25,000 grant plus your support, mentorship, everything, fully philanthropic, no contracts, no quid pro quo. So I thought it was spam. I thought it was a joke. This was a year and change ago, and it turned our life upside down. I mean, it's a fully federal lawsuit. And we, your spirit, mind, and body just get crushed. Right. And look, if we ever got sued, I figured it'd be a mistake we made or we messed up on something, but it was purely something that we felt was for the good of the country and was a great job creator, great program, and so on. So, but man, you got to get rid of your idealism quick when you're going to court. And I learned very fast, this is not about right and wrong. It's not about my values, their values. It was about the law. And so we hired who I think is the greatest attorney in the United States, Neil Katyal. We're very lucky he took our case because we're small potatoes compared to what he usually deals with. He's argued over 50 Supreme Court cases. But it was very clear that this could go to the Supreme Court. And so anyways, long story short, they sued us based on an old law called 1982 that was a post-Civil War Reconstruction law that said you could not discriminate when you are contracting with a business owner based on race. That was supposed to be against Black Americans. They tried to flip it, saying we need to reinterpret this law basically for white Americans. But these are not contracts. These are grants. These are philanthropic grants. We are a private company. We don't take any federal money. So I'm glad to say we a year of night and day, so much money, so much stress, that we did win this case. Wow. And we chose, we could have folded, we could have given in, we could have changed. And I think there was the thought that pick on the little guy, we'll have to back out of this. And Carolyn and Kelsey and I and the board, we created this company to give equitable access to capital, period. And the outcome of our case would have determined, could be almost $1 billion in how things are funded.
Wow.
For small business owners was the weight on our shoulders. Wow. And so, we said, look, if this was the original mission of our company, then we need to stick with this mission and fight this. And it was, I'm not going to lie, it was absolutely brutal. But listen, our small business owners rallied around us. We grew during it. We turned profitability during that time. I saw white male biker shops supporting our Black male commercial vehicle folks online. I saw the greatest stories come out of this. Yeah. And so are we better for it? I'm almost there. A few more cocktails. I think I'll get there. But it was definitely the right thing to fight. And now I'm saying, if we, this tiny company, stuck with us, stuck with our guns, feel like this is the greatest way to both make money, by the way, and create jobs in America, the Fortune 1000 needs to too. Like, give me a break. Let's go.
Let me tell you something. I am so, first of all, like, I gotta, like, so incredible, an incredible story. I think, my first question is.
It's not about my skin routine, is it, Zach?
No, not this time. I'm going to talk about that off mic. No. My first question is, as a white woman, like doing something specifically to help Black people in this particular context, and then being attacked, and it's like, through, like, frankly, some bullshit. What did that signal to, like, did that signal anything to you? Like, did that mess with, like, your hope or your, cause, like, that would, I'm not a white woman, right? Like, I'm not in your shoes, but, like, that would freak me out and make me angry in a way that I don't know if I can articulate. Like, you're literally, and to your point, like, I can tell by our conversation, like, there's a business case to do what you did, and it followed your mission, and it was helpful, and it addressed a very real need. Like, what, like, just that, like, that realization, like, damn, y'all are over here trying to flip an old law from Reconstruction on me for doing something that, and it don't even apply. Like, how did you navigate? Like, what were the feelings?
I would say, I mean, for me, Kelsey and Carolyn, I need to speak for all three of us. It was crippling at first. I mean, we all had different feelings. Carolyn as a Latina immigrant, Kelsey as a Black man, me as a white woman. I mean, we all were crippled for a few weeks of confusion, a lot of fear. I mean, our entire net worth is in this company. None of us came from high net worth. Like, we were also afraid of the engine behind them, the MAGA world. If we fight this, what's our families? Are they going to be under attack? I mean, there was just so much fear, Zach. And then I want to be really clear on something, because someone was like, "Oh, it's like Joan of Arc, blah, blah, blah." We did not come out like, we're going to fight this, like, straight up. It was a thoughtful process. It also, my number one responsibility is to the 1.5 million small business owners. And if fighting this meant we went bankrupt, who am I serving? Myself, the law, the business owners. So from a pure fiduciary standpoint, it was also a very difficult decision. But again, we came out the other side for all reasons that we were going to move forward. But, we had health issues. I think the stress was pretty weighty I had a heart issue this year. Kelsey was sick. I think it was more stress than any of us have handled emotionally. I think we were intellectually up for the task, but emotionally, it was brutal.
And it's
all the way up until the verdict. The verdict just happened. So it happened June 1st, I think. I don't remember right now. But so we're still kind of coming off of this.
And it's tough, right? Like, it's tough, like when, you're going through all these things and you look at the person doing it to you and they look like, like a little mole rat. Like that, I would imagine that don't help. You didn't say that. I'm saying like, because my wife and I, we see the content and we see him. Okay, I'm like, man, because I want to say he's only like a couple years older than me, Elizabeth. Like we're like low key almost the same age. I'm like, that hate, boy, that hate it'll dry you up. So
yeah.
I and to your point, you said, are we better for you? Said, ask me after a couple more drinks. What do you think it's going to take for you to look? Because to your point, it's all still very fresh. Like, do you think it's just a matter of time? Do you think it's like additional perspective? Like,
I think it's time. I think it's budget. We had to spend a lot of money on this. I'm still pissed when I look at our P&L. Right?
You can counter so we get that bread back.
Well,
yeah,
that's off the record, unfortunately. But I think time. I think building our budget back, which we're close. I'm really pissy about the other folks who are what was everyone calling it right now, cooling off with their commitments. Like that pisses me off, and I think it's because I'm so mad that we were in it, and I want them to be in it, and then it makes you jumpy. It's like when you're in a car wreck, and you're like, oh, if a car comes near you, you jump.
Yes.
Now I'm like, who's going to sue? There's this like notion of like, we are not like, we are every man at this point. We could, I have aged as a CEO because you never know what's going to happen. Right.
You're absolutely right too about like, I can't imagine like if I was to go through that fight and then I see like multi-billion-dollar organizations like who are touched trillions of dollars, like to your point, cool off. I'd be like, well, what do you mean?
Oh, it pisses me off so much, dude. I'm like, come on. I've always been a fighter and an advocate, but now I'm like, but look, on the other side of it, Zach, I've got to meet, we were reached out to by every, I would say, significant civil rights leader, organizations, and then the people you would never have imagined that you didn't even know were in the fight. So we've developed deep relationships through this. Also, our business owners know we're committed to them. So that's been super cool, right? And I think, there's some funny things. Like I'm sure that the folks who sued us didn't realize we're a Houston, Texas, like the Houston Chronicle backed us, right? You would never think a conservative paper like that would have our back. And so I think it put some odd bedfellows together, which is pretty cool. Yeah. Like, don't mess with small business. It's the heartbeat of America. We had a lot of centrist Republicans back us. Wow. Who just didn't believe that you should mess with private companies, So I do think, again, after cocktails and sleep and time, that there's been a lot of good things out of this too.
Well, to your point, like bringing these people together and getting that support and making it on the other side, like everyone is not as fortunate, right? You think about the Fearless Fund.
Well, yeah, and we are like this with the Fearless Fund. We have been, oh my gosh, the phone calls, the sisterly support, the love that we have for them, and I pray for them every night. Arian and everyone's just, it's tough right now, and I'm going all the way back to voting. Circuit judges, district judges, that all matters,
Yeah.
right? We were sued in two different environments. And that can mean two different outcomes. And so, if you're thinking about not going to the polls, I would say look at the Fearless Fund right now and get off your ass.
No, look, I love it. And I want to say this too, is like, to that point, right? Like, these attacks, like, I fully receive and can empathize with the idea of them being crippling, because it's like, wait a minute, we're coming together and mobilizing to solve a need that we have identified. We're not running and asking anyone for help. We're not trying to disenfranchise anyone and step on someone else to make ourselves taller. We are here, and we've innovated a solution to help our neighbor, and yet we're being criminalized for that. And like, and I mean, like, it's like, and it's one thing, like, to go through that process and serve, and like, respectfully, like, I hear, like, there's, like, not limping out of it, but you're recovering from that.
Yeah.
It's another thing to go through it and then suffer even further loss by being told, oh, actually, yeah, you can't help yourself. Right. Like, that is that is a, and I remember I saw earlier this summer and just a few months ago, like, when that news came out, and I was like, wow, the implications of this are so far reaching and so concerning, because what happens to the next Fearless Fund? What happens to the next 20 initiatives where people have the audacity to want to help to lift as they climb? They're going to be criminalized for that.
Well, the other thing that's dangerous, I learned a lot from Neil Katyal in this process about the law, which I knew nothing about before. And I guess that a lot of, like, 1982 and 1981, a lot of these laws, if society or whoever felt like there needed to be a new interpretation, they would go to Congress, they would debate them there on behalf of the people, and then move it forward. And now that the Congress has been locked up so tight the last decade, that the way they're getting to changes is through litigation, and litigation specifically in the private sector. And the private sector has never played that role. Usually Congress sets the laws, we follow the law, and then we run our business. And so I also think this is quite a dangerous precedent to follow your, whatever you want to call it, values, purpose, passion, through litigation. It's not what the system was built for. And it certainly detracts from jobs, economics, from growing businesses. It's just not the right place to debate these issues. Is a whole nother topic we could talk about on a whole different podcast.
Yeah, but 100%, because that's a phenomenal point, right? Like, and it's all.
We'll look at Fearless has a full injunction on their work until this gets resolved. Which means, you know what that means? That their corporate partners on this side, all the funding that they moved through with them is stuck, so they're not getting results. The entrepreneurs in their portfolios who were committed to funding and put it in their budgets aren't getting their money. So there is money being wasted just sitting in this injunction. It can't go back this way. It can't go back that. What a monumental fucking waste of money on top of what they're doing and costing Fearless.
Yeah.
That is bad for the economy. It's bad for jobs. It's stupid.
I mean,
it makes no sense.
It's just like, to your point, like, if I'm a business owner, I've been notified that I won this grant. Well, hey, I'm putting this in my stuff.
Absolutely.
Like, now, okay, great. Hey, now I can, if I have my line of credit or whatever the case is, I can go ahead and make that whatever I'm trying to do, because I've been told that this money is here.
Yeah. I've been signed.
Right. There's things that, like, no, hey, like, it's done. Then to turn around. Well, yeah, go ahead.
Zach, even I'm not discounting us or Fearless. Bigger money that's held up right now that no one's talking about is the 8A supplier diversity contracting at the Fed level was also sued.
Wow.
And so that's about $450 million minimum per 6 months that's going into contracts by the feds to women, people of color, U.S. veterans, and disabled veterans, 4 categories. Wow. They have been sued, saying that this isn't legal, and there is millions of dollars that is sitting there. And there was a program that Biden did called the Restaurant Revitalization Fund that everyone applied to it. It was committed. And these are to restaurants, food services, bodegas. And this is including white male veterans, by the way, which is, when people say this isn't about me, it's not true.
Wow.
That program was sued. They had already committed the funding, contracted with these business owners. They never got the money. And again, no one's talking about like the huge impact. Guess how many jobs was lost?
How many?
With that? I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm just saying, like,
countless.
That is a massive amount of money.
Yeah. No.
And so this is happening at the federal level, at the private sector level, at the nonprofit level with Fearless. I mean, it is just a dangerous, dangerous precedent for our economy, in addition to our own organizations.
You know, you
got me all fired up on a Friday night. I'm going to have to go drink tequila.
So what I'm going to say is that I appreciate your candor. I appreciate your co-founders of their team, your willingness to fight and grow. And like, you didn't say this, I'm just observationally, like, leveraging your privilege to then also highlight other things is critical and important, right? Like the fact that you made it out, like everyone's not going to be as fortunate, educating like the populace on like what's going on. Because from me sitting here, right, I'm looking at it and I just see headlines. And I'm like, man, that's crazy. But I'm like, but certainly like that isn't really, and it's really happening. Like, and it's a witch hunt, and it's interesting. There's different types of violence, right? And there's different ways that institutions just harm people, right? I think like a lot of like burning crosses were like switched in for like clipboards and obscure legalese and just like exasperated processes, because like how many businesses, like to your point about jobs, it's like how many businesses have gone under or stopped because this was the thing that was going to finally get them whatever, or they were right. Like that's just a shame. So like I don't want to end it like this mad. So let me ask this.
No, Jack. Well, remember what I said about resilience?
Yeah.
You know, the women with the Fearless Fund, they're going to build the world's greatest fucking
That's
thing
what I'm talking about.
They already had, but the next one's going to be even better. Right?
I love it.
It just.
And a shout out to the Fearless Fund. In fact, listen, Elizabeth, can you help me? Can you help me get the Fearless Fund on Living Corporate?
I would love to.
Please help me get the Fearless Fund over here. I want to talk to them direct. But look, hello, Alice. You're the president and CEO. Where can people, because I'm going to get you out of here on time, right? Because we had time, all right? So where can people learn more about you, about your work? Where can people support? Like, let's plug all that. We're going to put it in the show notes, but plug it here.
Yeah. So come see us at helloalice.com. Whether you started a business, you've been in it 10 years, you're thinking of starting it, you've adopted your parents' business, we are here to help you with your financial fitness, your equitable access to capital. We want you to meet each other. So at helloalice.com. I'm Elizabeth Gore, USA, across all the channels. And I love meeting anyone who wants to start and grow a business. I would love to dialogue with any of y'all at any time.
Look, it's been Elizabeth Gore, President, CEO at Hello Alice. You heard everything. You know what I'm saying? Listen, you got to vote, right? This is not, voting is the most passive civic action you can take. It is the most passive. Local. Like we're not talking about I'm talking about local, state, and national, right? Like it's not every 4 years, to your point, Elizabeth, that there's actions as a small business owner and frankly, just as a citizen. Your local elected officials are going to impact your day to day in much more tangible ways, right? Than the spokesperson for any one of these two parties, or frankly, the same party. But it's a conversation another day. It's not a political podcast. What I will say is, Elizabeth, again, thank you, and we will talk to you soon.
Zach, it was a pleasure. Happy Friday, fellow Texas human being. I love it. Good to see you.
Peace.
Thanks, man.